What's going on, people? It's your boy, the Boxing Lowdown, here for another episode of TBL Live. Delighted as always to be joined by my main man right here, my dad, my father, Laurie from AFTV. Now, if you guys didn't know, if you'd be living under a rock, I'm sure. Of course, we got the news yesterday that Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn has now been postponed, due to take place tomorrow night. Just a quick note for all of those that are yet to join. Don't forget to hit the like button on the way in. Share the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I get it, it's quite early today, so I'm not expecting many people to join, but this was literally the only time I could do. Now, with all that out the way, let's just get straight into it, man. Chris Eubank Jr., Conor Benn, the timeline of events over the last week. We were all set for the fight this weekend. However, it later was revealed that Conor Benn tested positive for a banned substance. That has all in turn led to this fight being postponed for now. The statement that was read out by Eddie Hearn at the press conference, I've got that in front of me, so I'll quickly read that, and then I'll allow Laurie to share his thoughts. The last video that we did, it was when we knew Conor Benn had tested dirty, but now the fight has actually been postponed. So let me just read this out. After discussions with various parties, we have taken the decision to formally postpone the bout between Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn. It is undeniable that the British Boxing Board of Control's decision to withdraw their sanctioning was procedurally flawed and without due process. That remains a legal issue between the promoters and the board, which we intend to pursue. Interesting. However, whilst there are legal routes to facilitate the fight taking place as planned, we do not believe that it is in the fighters' interests for those to be pursued at such a late stage or in the wider interest of the sport. As promoters, we take our obligations and duties very seriously, and a full investigation will now need to take place. We will be making no further comment at this time, and news for ticket holders' refunds will follow. That was the statement that was read out by Eddie Hearn yesterday afternoon. Laurie, your thoughts? Big up my man Harvey, always here showing love in the building.
You say you want my thoughts, what, on the statement or the cancellation? Or
the statement, first of all. That statement.
That statement was obviously carefully drafted by lawyers. Like you said, the first part of that statement was interesting, where he talks about the decision taken by the British Boxing Board of Control they consider to be procedurally flawed, and that that's an issue that they intend to pursue. So it'll be interesting to see what arises from that. Because we do know now, don't we, that the British Boxing Board of Control are slightly complicit in this as well, because we are being made to be aware that they knew about the failed test some weeks ago. So you have to wonder why they didn't act sooner. It would appear that they didn't act sooner because Eddie Hearn is saying that, up until this week, they believed the fight was going ahead. So it's only until all this hit the fan that the British Boxing Board of Control came out and said, well, actually, the fight shouldn't go ahead, which, of course, is the correct decision taken by them. It's just that it took very long time to come out. Because let's be honest, though, the more and more you dig in this thing, the more worms keep coming out. So we now know that the only reason why this came to light in the first place was the fact that a reporter from the Daily Mail, I think it was the one who leaked this story. Otherwise, it would have been another Dillian White versus Rivas situation, isn't it, where you find out afterwards, if at all. So listen, not too many people come out with this with much credit, man. I mean, first and foremost, the blame has to be apportioned to Conor Benn, first and foremost, because he was the one who took the banned substance, whether knowingly or unknowingly, as he might want to protest. We've not really heard too much from him, which is disappointing, but I guess the lawyers would have told him to keep stum for now. But whether knowingly or unknowingly, the rules are very clear. You are responsible for what goes into your body. He failed. We now know it's facts that he failed a drugs test back in, I think it was July or whatever it is, August. So first and foremost, the blame starts with him, but it doesn't end with him, because then you got the people around him in his camp, right? Because I'm pretty sure he didn't do this by himself. And then you got Eddie Hearn, who I have to say, man, his behaviour and the way he's been exposed as being such a hypocrite We've all seen the video clips that are going around viral on Twitter. More than one occasion, we're in castigating other fighters, other promoters. The UCAD, you know what I mean? The same one that he's trying to hide behind to try and get this fight going. He's now saying that, VADA, even though Ben failed with VADA, he was passed by UCAD. I mean, he's taken some big L's this week, man. Eddie Hearn has. And I actually think that ultimately, the fallout from this and the public opinion was very against this fight. Literally everyone said this fight should not go ahead. And I think in the end, they kind of weighed it up and thought, you know what? Let's just not do it this time. They're talking about postponement, which means it's not cancelled, which means that they're going to try and judge the mood and see if they can go for it again next year. It's just shameful, bro. Mm-hmm. And like I said, even the British Boxing Board of Control, I know they're going to take the moral high ground now, but you knew about this 3 weeks ago, according to Eddie Hearn. He threw them under the bus. You know what I mean? So, and I'm pretty sure that will be part of the so-called process that they plan to pursue. So listen, man, not too many people come well out of this. I guess you could say Chris Eubank comes out well out of this, but not too many others involved.
Interesting question here from Diaz. He says here, I'm quite intrigued to find out who leaked this to the media.
Well, that's a very good question. I actually spoke to somebody this morning about that. And they said it could be, a disgruntled person within Eddie Hearn's own organization that might be responsible for this. You just don't know. And the person also said to me, goes, you have to understand, Laurie, that Eddie Hearn's got quite a few enemies, people who want to see him fall, because, some people regard him, and this is not my words, as being quite arrogant and smug and somebody that needs to be taken down. So you don't know who it is, really. It could be anybody, really. But somebody told the press guys leaked it out, and here we are.
Yeah, shout out to Ian Hamilton, DS, K22. Big up all you guys, man. I see you here. Just my thoughts on the whole situation. I think, you said it there earlier. Probably one of the only people that comes out well in this, and someone who I actually feel a bit sorry for, is Chris Eubank Jr. Do you know what I mean? He had to go through that severe weight cut, even though it only sounds like 3 pounds. It's a weight he hasn't been at since he was young. He did everything what he had to do. Do you know what I mean? And part of me thinks to me, like, did Chris Eubank Sr. have an idea of what was going on here? Which is why he was saying boycott the fight, but he just wasn't able to say it until it got leaked officially. I guess we won't know, but he was against it for now anyway. But I think really only Chris Eubank really comes out of this with an ounce of credit here. The rest of them, a lot of their reputations are in the mud. Conor Benn. I've seen the videos of Conor Benn yesterday. I'm sure you saw it, of when he was literally going off on Jarrell Miller for failing a drugs test, and now it come back to haunt you. The internet is a wild place, man, and it's unforgiving. Do you know what I mean?
Somebody once said to me, two of the most dangerous things in life are a camera and a microphone. And this is the type of thing that he meant, is that things you say on the record, man, can often come back to bite you in the bum. You're interesting you made that point about Chris Eubank Sr. And a lot of people now are sort of zeroing in on that and saying, it's possible that he might have known. He might well have known. You know what I mean? Because as I was saying to you off camera, and I'm going to say it now, and this might have been part of the reason why the powers that be, I say powers that be, I don't even like to really describe that, but the people involved might have, maybe the lawyers might have advised them, said, listen, you guys are treading on dangerous territory, given what's happened with the failed drugs test, given how public this is, given the level of, let's face it, universal outrage, the fact that you were considering pursuing having this fight go ahead, what are you guys going to do in the, let's face it, unlikely, but possibility that if Conor Benn was to knock Chris Eubank out, or damage him or whatever in any way, can you imagine the fallout that would happen? There'd be lawsuits going around all over the place, and just boxing would be finished pretty much as a sport, wouldn't it? I would imagine politicians would get involved and call for a ban on boxing. So I think maybe it is the people advising Eddie Hearn, the lawyers, etc., might have said to him, look, you may need to think about this again, because if anything happens on fight night, you just don't know how this is going to get real ugly. You know what I mean? And it could get real costly for you guys. So do you really want to go there? You know, so these things might have contributed to the fight being cancelled, or sorry, postponed. It's not cancellation, is it? Because I must admit, Daryl, I didn't see it coming like this. I genuinely thought that they would find a loophole and ensure that this fight went ahead.
Well, they could have. They could have went down that route. They could have went down it, but Eddie Hearn chose not to. Maybe because of the backlash that he was getting. I'll presume.
Well, this is what I'm saying. The backlash that he would have no doubt have received, because like I said before, you only had to go online to see there was almost universal. In fact, I wouldn't say almost. I didn't see one person that said the fight should go ahead other than Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr. There was universal condemnation. So that's number one. And number two, like I said, you have to consider the possibility if something went wrong to either fighter, yeah, that could have resulted in some pretty serious shit, man. You know what I mean? So, yeah. Well, but in the end, the right decision was made. It's just that they took too long to make it.
I'm seeing a few comments in here. Big up to everybody in the chat, man. Let's start off with K22's one. He says here, Van Heerden, I don't know if you saw this. Van Heerden came out saying that there was no testing for his fight with Benn, and he was confused how Benn had knocked him out when Errol Spence and Jerome Ennis couldn't. Now we know why. That's what Van Heerden's saying, man. And look, remember, I'm sure everybody here knows now as well, Conor Benn, due to an admin issue, didn't sign up to VADA, you know, an admin issue. But then once the pressure got put on him, he signed up. So I'm not saying that that's another reason or whatever, but like, it just doesn't look good, does it? It don't look good for Conor Benn. He's really coming out quite bad in this situation, man. And I'm wondering how they're going to repair the rep. Do they give it time and let it just, you know, move on for a little bit before trying to get your PR team to get it rolling again? Or how do you repair this reputation that he's damaging at the moment?
He is very damaged at the moment because of the public outrage that, you know, I mean, the fallout from this has been considerable. So right now, you look at it and you think there's going to have to be some serious damage limitation for him to restore the confidence in him, you know, as far as the public is concerned. But then, as I said to you the other day in your show, Daryl, look at Canelo, so-called pound for pound number one. He got caught. And, you know what I mean, there was actually people riding for him over that. You know what I mean? Same like Tyson Fury, he got caught. I'm just giving two names off the top of my head. There's many, many others. And even Jerome Miller, one of the worst cases in recent years. He's back boxing. John Pascal, another real serious drugs cheat, man. You know what I mean? Did he even serve a ban, John Pascal? You know what I mean? Like, the sport is a cesspool right now, man. Seriously, it really is. And I don't know if, with regards to Conor, I mean, I want to say this straight up. Like, I was a fan of his, but I have no sympathy for him right now, man, because the guy tried to cheat. And as we always say, cheating in boxing or in combat sports is not the same as cheating in a 100-meter race or in athletics or football or anything like that. These guys are going in there to hurt each other. You know what I mean? The name of the game is to render somebody unconscious. And when you pump full of steroids or whatever it is, then you are cheating to levels which cannot be compared to other sports. This is life-threatening stuff we're talking about here. You know what I mean? And as I was saying on the show the other day, what is it going to take for the authorities to start issuing proper bans, not 6-month bans when fighters only fight once, twice a year anyway? When are they really going to take this serious and send out a message to these guys? You know what I mean? What's happened there is just the tip of the iceberg, man. There now needs to be some investigations. Conor Benn needs to be questioned, possibly under oath, yeah? And he needs to tell what happened exactly, you know what I mean? And name names, where did he get this stuff from? Because he didn't acquire this stuff from himself. Who's helping him in his camp? What are their roles in the camp? What are they doing? You know what I mean? Big questions need to be put and they need to be answered, man. You know what I mean?
Some of the like what DS is saying here, you know, and K22 said it earlier, you know, Conor Benn was there, he was blowing through a lot of man at welterweight, man. He was getting one punch, spectacular knockouts, and Do you know what I mean? You think of how he looked in his career before, when he was first starting out. I'm not saying that there's a reason to it, but I'm just highlighting the facts, man. He's improved significantly over the last couple of years, and he's been developed his knockout power, and he's looking very strong in the ring. He's got, he's still charged after the fight. I'm not alluding to anything here, but do you know what I mean? People are going to start questioning that.
Yeah, but it's only right that they should. I mean, listen, I've been on the record as describing him as one of my favourite fighters. And I know you weren't totally convinced about him, but I think you will agree with this, that compared to when he first started, yeah, and him going life and death with Cedric Pena, no disrespect to Cedric Pena, but come on now, you know what I mean? The level of improvement since then that Conor Benn has made is almost a 360. And I was one of those. I was taken in. I thought, wow, look at this guy. I described him as being the most improved fighter in Britain. And I think a lot of people would have said the same thing. Now we know what we know now. You're looking back at some of those victories, like you said, the Van Heerden one, the Chris Algieri one, and even the fights that were not knockouts. He won convincingly. And I'm looking back at some of those fights now, and on reflection, I'm thinking, you know what? This guy wasn't even tired at the end of those fights or anything like that. You know what I mean? He was retaining the same power, speed, explosivity that he displayed in the earlier rounds right through to the end. Now, he said things like, oh, I'm crushing it in the gym. Remember that famous term he likes to use? Crushing it in the gym. Now you know why you were crushing it in the gym, bro. You know what I mean? Because, you know what I mean? Like somebody said to me the other day as well, sorry to keep using these little terms like that, but shoplifters, when they're caught, it's very, very rare that it's the first time they went out stealing and they got caught. The way things work in life is that they would have been doing that many, many, many times before. It's just that they got caught on that particular occasion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So he's got a lot of explaining to do, man. His reputation is probably damaged irreparably. But right now, it's at rock bottom. And it's somebody said to me today as well, right? A friend of mine, they said they're even looking at his dad's career now and saying, "Rah, is it something that and which is really sad, isn't it?"
That's so sad, yeah.
Yeah, that's how sad it is. Not only are people questioning Conor Benn, they're questioning like the legacy of his father now. They're saying, "Well, listen, if he'd done that, who's advising him?" You know what I mean? Is it people that work with Nigel? And that is horrible for me to hear. Because I actually know Nigel Benn as well, actually. He was a guy that I used to be quite friendly with because I had a couple of friends of mine who used to help him out in camp. And I got to meet Nigel Benn through them. Hella nice guy. What a warrior, a legend, not just of British boxing, but world boxing. And now there are some people, not myself, obviously, but people out there saying, well, I wouldn't mind betting, man, that the dad was on it as well. I mean, like I said, I find it very difficult to have any sympathy for him, man. He's let himself down. He's let his family down. He's let his dad down. He's let boxing down, man. You know what I mean?
Now, I have to ask this because there will be some people out there that may believe it, but is there any way how this could have been? And I've seen Ricky Hatton come out, say, oh, I believe Conor. And is there any way that you can envisage Conor Benn accidentally take? And even if that was the case, it was his own very words in that interview on Sky when he was talking about Jarrell Miller. Oh, even if you take it by accident, I have a team around me. If I have any sort of tablets, they check everything. So regardless if it was accident or not, you're culpable. But can you envisage any sort of situation where he may have genuinely just not slipped for one moment and took that?
Not with this drug, no. This wasn't some over-the-counter supplement that was later found to have substances in it that are on the banned list. This is something that would have to have been applied. And this level of doping we're talking about, it's not your everyday doping, though. This requires people in his camp, people close to him who were advising him. Because that drug, clomiphene, my research suggests that it's some kind of HRT, hormone replacement therapy, and that's taken typically when people are cycling off drugs. So what the common consensus seems to be at the moment is that Conor Benn was likely on a number of different steroids and he took this to replenish his testosterone, which drops when you come off the drugs that you've been taking. That's how people have explained it to me. So this ain't no accident thing, you know what I mean? This ain't no, I went into the medicine cabinet at home, didn't feel well, took a tablet, and lo and behold, you know what I mean? It's not one of them. It's not no nasal spray thing. You know what I mean? This is proper shit.
Cockney Governor making me laugh, man. He's saying here he went on the gear because that drug is like a pregnancy thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's an infertility drug. So how do you explain that, bro?
Yeah.
Are we going to go down the Kid Galahad route here, that I fell out with a family member and they slipped it in my drink or put it in my food? That's why Kid Galahad, to this very day, you know, no one rocks with that guy. You know what I mean? And he showed no remorse about that either, Kid Galahad.
That's the bad thing to me.
Yeah, no remorse, no contrition. Oh, it is what it is. I don't think Conor Benn will be that stupid. I would imagine what they're doing now, they're probably getting their heads together and they're going to try and come out with some wording or statement that somehow seems plausible. But I don't know how they're going to do it, bro, because everyone's across this. That's the thing. It's so public that everyone's across it. And they've got to be very careful what they say. And some people have said he should just come out and admit he was cheating. And even that, although there is some sense in that, I don't think they're going to do that, bro. Because all his wins, as I said, I was watching all his wins according to Question. I was watching a podcast the other day with Chris Algieri. And he was talking about how affected he was by that knockout and how upset he feels to know now that he was in the ring with somebody that was cheating, somebody that he said could have took his life. And he actually said in that same podcast, Daryl, I forget the name of it, you should watch it. But he said in that same podcast, he goes, that defeat of it, he was thinking about retiring because of how poorly he performed and how badly he was knocked out. But he said, actually, now that what I know, he goes, I'm actually going to maintain my career. I'm going to come back because obviously the person that beat me was cheating. So it's not a real fight. Yeah, I mean, so it's not just like him taking steroids. It's the effects, the opponents he's faced. How must they be feeling? I know if it was me and I'd been in with Conor Benn and he knocked me out, I'd be probably looking to sue him as well if I could. It's what he's done is disgusting, though. You know, I don't think some of these guys who are cheating and some of these people who are putting these boxers up to cheat, they don't quite understand the sort of fallout it has from it, the damage. I mean, even so, like the undercard fighters the other day, I felt so sorry for those guys, man. They've been training for weeks and weeks, sacrificing, spending money on training camps, and then 3 days before the fight, no fault of their own,
Not
just
gonna
because
get paid.
Being caught.
They won't get paid either. Do you know what I mean? They had their expenses probably won't get covered for this. You know, you got to think about that.
Yeah, so there's ramifications for a whole load of people. It's not just Conor Benn and Eubank involved in this. What about all the people who bought tickets and spent money on hotel rooms and made arrangements? I mean, I've heard that there was people coming over for this fight from America and Europe and places like that. What about them?
Yeah.
It's such a bad look for the sport. And what made it worse was the fact that initially, anyway, Eddie Hearn and Sauerland and all those guys, they were actively seeking to get the fight on. And I think there was a huge backlash against it, which is, like I said, what probably led to, in the end, they probably thought, you know what, if we go, I reckon they read the temperature of the room and thought, nah, I don't think it's going to work. And I also think that they would have been advised by lawyers that, listen, if anything goes wrong on fight night, then there could be serious repercussions for everybody. And they probably thought, you know what, let's allow it, let's postpone it, let's revisit this later, see if we can get it on next year.
I'm curious to see what happens now with Conor Benn, because Eddie Hearn said yesterday he wanted to make it clear that Conor Benn was not suspended or anything like that. What sort of action now are the British Boxing Board of Control going to take? Is Conor Benn going to serve a ban? Is he going to get reprimanded over this? They're going to the High Court over, you know, this is not over, according to Eddie Hearn's statement. However, I want to know what happens with Conor Benn now. Do you know what I mean? They're talking about postponing the fight until when? Like what? Early next year? Like mid next year? Like, I want to know what happens now.
Well, the money men will try and look at this and see if there's a way that they can put the fight on again. Yeah. That's very clear. In fact, Eddie Hearn, as part of his statement, said that. You do raise a very interesting point about the British Boxing Board of Control, because the British Boxing Board of Control use UCAD for their testing, which operate at a much lower threshold than VADA does. VADA is an independent body. They're very expensive, apparently, as well. And their threshold is much higher. So they tend to catch a lot more people. However, because I guess Eddie Hearn is technically right in what he says, he's passed the test with UCAD, which is what is recognised by the British Boxing Board of Control. So really, realistically,
he'll probably avoid a ban then.
Yeah, he can't. They can't really ban him, can they?
No.
So he is right about that, Eddie Hearn.
He is.
What can I mean?
It's an ugly loophole, isn't it? But it is one.
Yeah, exactly. The British Boxing Board of Control should have had something in their regulations that say if you get caught, even if it's not UCAD, if you get caught by a recognised drug testing body, we will recognise that and ban you accordingly. Yeah. But clearly there's nothing in their rules to suggest that they can do that. You know what I mean? So it's very interesting because you can't retrospectively ban someone. You can't say, right, we're going to bring in this rule now and then ban somebody. It's already after the event. So I really don't know, Daryl, obviously we don't know their rules or regulations per se. We can only speculate, but is there that much they can really do?
Well, this is a good question from Obes, and the whole B sample thing. Like, listen, we know what it's about. You bring back an adverse finding. There's a B sample as well to kind of underline that is definitely the case. However, in certain situations, circumstances we've seen before, the B sample suddenly just disappears. So there's always ambiguity around that positive testing. Now, will we ever get it? Why are people allowed to just get away with it? Why is it not a mandatory requirement to have the B sample there? Like, why don't we have access to this? Like with Dylan White, it was kind of just swept under the carpet. The fight went on, as we know. In this situation here, we're never going to get a B sample. But, you know, what happens? Why is it not a legal requirement for us to get that B sample?
As I understand it, the B sample is opened at the request of the person that tested positive in the first place. That is that's my current understanding. Maybe somebody out there that's listening to this or watching this may be able to correct me. So I don't know, is my answer. This whole B sample thing is clouded in mystery. But yeah, that is my understanding. The B sample is at the request of the person who tested positive in the first place. I mean, let's be honest, man. The chances that the B sample is going to be any different to the A sample is nigh on impossible, because as you know, Daryl, when they take the initial test, right, the P test, the sample is split. It's the same sample, but it's split into two, A and B. Yeah, but it's the same sample. You know what I mean? So the chances of the B sample being any different to A is nigh on impossible. And I think that the only reason they do that is because if the A sample tests positive and then they notify the fighter or whoever it is that, listen, your sample tested positive, but we've got an A and a B sample, you can request the C and B, is as if there's some kind of contamination that took place in the process of taking a sample, which might render the A sample dubious, you know what I mean? But from what I'm hearing, like I said, I don't think there's ever been a case. I think somebody said one case in X amount of years. So they're not going to get out of it like that. You know what I mean? The fact is this guy tested positive. Yeah. And you know what I'm like, Daryl, about, I mean, the other day people was on there saying, oh, I haven't got the same energy. I have got the same energy because I didn't want the fight to go ahead when Oscar Valdez tested positive. And I did check what I said. You know what I mean? For all of you out there, oh, you're not keeping the same energy.
I was only playing devil's advocate. You know that anyway. But I know some people jumped on that.
Yeah, but they were too quick to jump on it because they were trying to make it between me and them instead of listening to the facts of what I said. I said that the difference in the Oscar Valdez fight is that I said he should have been stripped of his world title and that be awarded to Conceicao. In this particular fight, there is no title. This fight from the get-go was a load of nonsense. Yeah, it was a manufactured rivalry by promoters. It was contrived. I'd never heard once Conor Benn saying, yeah, I want to fight Chris Eubank and vice versa. People might have said to them over the years, oh, how about a fight between you two? But I've never heard the two of those guys solicit for this fight. They're two weight classes apart, two totally different stages in their career. You know what I mean? So there's no natural rivalry here. The only rivalry was manufactured by the press because of the surnames involved. Mm. You know what I mean? So it was a nonsense fight. It was a bordering on a YouTube fight for me. But fair play to the promoters. They were actually going to get away with it, weren't they?
Because it was going to do big numbers here. It was still going to do big numbers.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. By all accounts, it was set to do massive numbers. So you actually have to give the promoters, Eddie Hearn and whoever else, Wasserman and whoever, was it Wasserman? Sauerland and all those guys, credit, because they sat down, dreamed up some idea, poo-pooed by a lot of us proper fans, or, you know what I mean, non-casual fans, and yet it was set to take off at the box office, so to speak. So I guess you've got to give them credit for their creativity and their innovation. But let's be honest, man, real boxing fans knew that this fight was a joke from the first place.
Rare Cockney Governor says here, Paddy Hearn needs to take some of the blame too. Paddy Hearn, he's... I mean, listen, time will flow, and I'm sure, you know, there's going to be a lot more times we'll see Eddie. There's going to be a lot more shows going on. People they won't forget, but I just get the feeling that time's a healer in this situation, and all promoters are dirty. Do you know what I mean?
Well, listen,
I'm not defending here, but what I will say is that I'm not defending him by any means, but what I will say is that any promoter would have done this, man. Like, I've seen Frank Warren come out and say, oh, you know, if it was me, I would have. They all would have tried to keep the show on. Let's be honest. So I get it, but the reason why it looks bad on Eddie Hearn is because he's been he's had so much to say in the past about this, and now he's doing it, which is why it looks so bad. But let's not get it twisted, man. All of these promoters would have done it. They would have tried to keep it on if they could.
Yeah, of course they would. But I think the thing with Eddie Hearn is that, as I hinted at earlier, he is considered by a lot of people to be quite arrogant, smug, always calling himself the greatest promoter. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And then his hypocrisies have come back to bite him in the ass. And I'll say this as well. Next to Conor Benn, I think the person whose reputation is most damaged is him. You know what I mean? Eddie Hearn. You know what I mean? Because if you notice, not too many people is talking about Callie Sauerland. The two people whose names have been mentioned are Conor Benn and Eddie Hearn. And I would almost go as far as to say that more people seem to be having a go at him on Twitter than they are Conor Benn at this moment in time. Even though Conor Benn ultimately is his fault, all of this.
Yeah.
Because even if he's been, I've seen people saying, oh, you know, I feel a little bit of empathy for Conor Benn because it's the people around him. Well, actually, no, because at the end of the day, the rules are very clear. You are responsible for what goes into your body. It's your body. Yeah. So even if some guy rocks up to you claiming to be an S&C coach or a nutritionist or a fitness scientist or whatever moniker he's got, and he says, look, Conor, I can provide you with ways where you can increase your performance by 75%. He would still have had to say yes, wouldn't he? You know what I mean? So come on now. And like I said, the drug that he took, that it's going to be very difficult to explain to people how you managed to ingest a female infertility drug into your body. Explain that and make that make sense, bro. Because, you know what I mean? I want to hear the explanation. I can't wait.
We got Shane Willoughby in the house, man. Big up Shane. He says here, I'm going to say this, as I said prior, B sample does not have to be tested unless it's requested by the commission and the fighter that paid for the testing. The issue is that the British Boxing Board of Control do not recognize VADA. Just probably don't have enough to fund VADA, do they? I'd say.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, it's not so much to fund VADA because VADA
fund it for every fight that they do. You know, like as
well, as far as I'm aware, it's the fighters that pay and enroll into the service. It's not the British Boxing Board of Control, but the British Boxing Board of Control, they use UCAD for their testing. As I said, it's commonly known throughout the sport that UCAD operate at a much lower threshold than VADA do. VADA are the ones who got the real scientists on board and who They catch people on a regular basis, man. Not just in boxing, and you know what I mean, a whole variety of sports. So, like I said, they're ahead of the game way more than UCAD are. You know what I mean? So it's like a lot of things, isn't it, Daryl? You pay for what you get. UCAD, they do their best within the resources that they have, but they're not on the same level as VADA.
We ain't got long left. I'd say probably got about 10 minutes left or so. But there's a good question here from Boxing Pound for Pound Jack. Big up, bro. He says here, why isn't anyone suing Matchroom for deceiving the public and covering up the failed test, which they knew 3 weeks back? The tickets from StubHub and hotel reservations that people have lost in money should be reimbursed as there was purposeful cover-up from Matchroom and DAZN. Great point. That second comment.
I think they might be able to circumvent that by saying that they're postponing it. And then what they'll do is they'll offer people refunds for their tickets, knowing that a lot of people...
What about the hotel bookings and all that other stuff?
Yeah, maybe there might be some disclaimers in those contracts. I don't know. But listen, I've been to events that have been cancelled before, music concerts and stuff like that. And I know for a fact that not everybody that bought the ticket is going to, especially if they're talking about rescheduling it, they're not going to claim their money back, not straight away anyway. So, but yeah, man, like I said, Conor Benn first and foremost, but I think Eddie Hearn's reputation has taken a real battering this week. And it might take even somebody that's so articulate and loves to talk so much as he does. Even he's going to struggle because there'll always be people out there that's going to remind him of this state. You know what I mean? So
I wonder how, how will this affect him with the media going forward? I mean, he's always cast himself as, an open book. To be fair to him, he gives all this. He's fair when it comes to the media. He always gives interviews. You know what I mean? How will it affect him going forward? Do you think he may be a bit more reserved now with what he says? Or do you think he'll continue being how he is? Because like you said, his reputation's taking a hit.
I think he'll definitely have to be a bit more reserved and considered when he's talking about things like drugs and peds in sport. I think he would have realised that by now, because I'm sure he's seen some of these memes that are going around. But let's be honest and say that he has done some good things for the sport as well, though. He has he's been a major player in the sport over the years since he's been involved in boxing. He has a massive reputation. He's put on some great fights. So we can't, just throw him under just like that. But make no mistake, man, his name right now is dirt, bro. Trust me. Like I said, you've only got to go online and go on your Twitter account and see some of the things that are going around about him at the moment. And they can't be nice things to read if you're Eddie Hearn. But he does seem to have a thick skin. He's a confident guy. He will back himself. And like you said, Daryl, time is a healer, isn't it? So maybe he might need to adopt a slightly lower profile in the coming weeks and months, be a bit more, show some contrition, show a bit of remorse, man. You know what I mean? Show that you've in tune with the empathy of the fans. Like, you know what I mean? If you come out and say, yeah, we're going to get this fight back, or yeah, we're going to sue the British, that to me is not the way to handle it. You know what I mean? And I'm sure people who work within his organisation, I'm sure there will be, devising a sort of damage limitation or, or something like that. Exercise, try and get his name out there in a more positive light. Because right now, like I said, a lot of people are pinning this on him, man.
I think if I was an advisor in around that camp, particularly Conor Benn, not justifying anything that he's done, of course, but, I would say, for now, you just got to try and maintain a low profile when the time is right. Maybe towards the beginning of next year, maybe, give a full explanation as to what happened, what you're going to do to going forward. Say you are a clean advocate for the sport and whatever. You need a bit of PR here, I think, because right now your name is in the dirt.
But he also needs a bit of honesty, Daryl. Someone said there about can't wait to listen to Eddie's next IFL interview. I'm not even sure if the IFL interview is going to cut it. Because
Umar might grill him, man. Umar might grill Eddie, you don't think?
Will he even speak?
He don't grill Frank, but he grills Eddie.
Yeah, but I don't. I think you need somebody a bit more who knows what they're doing, man, who can ask him the proper questions. No disrespect to Umar, but those guys have a certain style which works. But I would like to see him being interviewed by somebody who has a depth of knowledge in this situation. You know what I mean? A proper journalist that, when I say proper journalist, I'm not trying to belittle what IFL do because I'm a fan of theirs. I subscribe to the channel. In fact, I used to work with Coogan and him, man. Coogan's my boy. He was came down to visit.
A Ronald McIntosh, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, somebody that's more independent, that has less of a relationship with him, that can ask him certain, you know what I mean, questions that get to the heart of the matter. And I would like to see Eddie Hearn challenged, you know what I mean, and give answers that, you know what I mean, to questions that are considered and, you know what I mean, encourage him to be honest. You know what I mean? So, yeah, he needs to be challenged, man. The sort of YouTube interviews, I'm not sure how much they're going to cut it, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. Well, last one here before we go. Chris Eubank Jr. I mean, it's looking like, you know, like we said at the beginning of the show, like we're saying here, the fight is technically postponed. So it's looking like it will be rescheduled at some point. But I'm looking at him in his career right now. He's what, 32, 33 years old. You know, he hasn't had many fights over the last year or so. Hasn't really been that active, I don't think. Is he coming towards the end of his career now? I saw him call out Jake Paul. The motivation doesn't really seem to be there to go after a Triple G, a Yanni Beck, or one of them serious middleweight contenders, even Demetrius Andrade. It just seems like he's winding it down now. What would you like to see from him? Would you like to see them pursue this fight, or what
he's going to pursue this fight? I mean, it was interesting to see that when this all went down, he was quite vocal in saying that he wanted to fight on. He's saying, yeah, I've done my job. I'm still willing to fight. Well, I can't help but think the main reason was because of the amount of money he stood to gain from this. You know what I mean? And it was interesting as well, Daryl, that no sooner as this fight was off, who do you think was the first person that Chris Eubank called out?
Jake Paul. That's what I'm saying.
That shows the extent of this man's ambitions. I said to you before, I'm very disappointed in him. No sooner the fight being called off, he's calling out bloody Jake Paul, as if to just accentuate what I was saying before about the whole nonsense of this. What he should have been doing was trying to get the fight with Yanni Beck. He's left Denzel Bentley to do that. And I'll tell you what, right, Daryl, I'll bet you any money if somehow, and no disrespect to Denzel, if Denzel was to go and somehow beat Yanni Beck, I bet you any money Chris Eubank would call Denzel Bentley out.
Are you supporting Eubank because you still feel he's got a lot more left to challenge for a title at the top?
I don't know how much more he's got left, but I'm just disappointed in the route he's gone down. He's just made it very clear he's only about the bag, and that's what's disappointing.
He's definitely made the bag.
Yeah, but it's just the pursuit of money. And they've got a phrase that they often use in America, but I've heard it in this country as well, where they say, not all money is good money. You know what I mean? And in a way, it's kind of karma the way this fight fell apart, isn't it? This whole thing was just created, manufactured, contrived in a bid to fool the gullible public that this was some great rivalry and all this stuff, when there was never any rivalry, bro. Just because they're the sons of famous fathers. You know what I mean? It meant nothing really, because they're not in the same weight class, nowhere near. 2 weight classes north of each other. So come on now. So this was a creation in an office, Eddie Hearn's office or Sauerland, wherever it was. And they said, oh, I know. How about Conor Benn? And then they dreamed up the idea, put it to the fighters, and they were like, yeah, we're all in. Because they was thinking about that. Conor Benn knew that if he lost the fight, he could put it down to the weight and say, well, actually, I'm a welterweight anyway. I'm going to go back to being a welterweight. Chris Eubank, he's got the bag. He's coming to that twilight end of his career. He's been in at the very top level. He's not quite cut it. He knows he's probably not about that life no more. And it's obvious because he's not calling out any of the big guys anymore. Remember back in the day, Eubank would say, I'll fight anyone. I want Golovkin, I want this, I want that. It never happened for whatever reason. And since then, he's not even calling those guys out. He's calling out Jake Paul. When you hear a professional fighter calling out a YouTuber, you know what's up, bro. You know what's up. You know what I mean? So it is what it is, as Kid Galahad likes to say.
Well, listen, man, we'll end it there anyway, man. Been a very good show, man. Very good numbers here as well. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Loved all the comments today, and thank you for joining at this time as well. Not our usual time, not a usual day for us, but we thought we'd do one today, man, for sure. So I want to give a shout out to all you guys, man. I hope you enjoy your weekend. We'll be back, of course, next week. We've got a big weekend of boxing to look forward to next weekend. We got Devin Haney, Cambosos. We got Clarissa Shields and Savannah Marshall. Michaela Mayer and Bam Gardner. Deontay Wilder's back. So we got a lot to talk about next weekend, man. So until then, thank you all for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your Friday, whatever you guys are doing. And yeah, we'll see you guys very soon. Lloyd, do you want to close it out?
No, man, it was a perfect conclusion there. I would just say, though, like I said, this whole thing has just, it's put boxing in a very bad light. But in some ways, there might be some good that might come of this. You know what that is? Just to wrap up by saying that when this is a chance now for people like the British Boxing Board of Control and other regulatory bodies now to really give serious consideration to what they're going to do with drugs cheats. Because let's be honest, man, Conor Benn cheated. I don't care what he says. I mean, I saw an interview with him the other day and he didn't even deny taking drugs, you know. All he said is all my tests have been clean up to this point. I mean, like, the man's engaging in semantics already. That was probably something that come out of his mouth that the lawyers advised him to say. The man did not deny taking drugs. He said, all my tests have been clean up to this point, and other than the VADA test, which when I listened to that, I thought, you see that? The man's skillfully trying to avoid the question. But anyway, back to my point. What I would like to see now is, given what's happened and the scale of the fallout, I'd like to see bodies like the British Boxing Board of Control tighten up their regulations, number one. Number two, they need to really think about how they can address this problem and start handing out serious bans. I mean, I've heard people like Carl Frampton and one or two others saying, by the way, where's Tony Bellew gone in all this? But anyway, people like Carl Frampton saying that they'd like to see life bans for first-time cheats, which I think, I don't know how that's unlikely. But anyway, the whole conversation has opened up about the need for stricter bans. I mean, listen, Tyson Fury pretty much got away with what he got away with in it. The so-called bans in it that he got was negligible, if at all. Likewise with Canelo. And now those two guys are at the very top of this sport, making millions of pounds and dollars, winning titles, and no one's talking about it anymore. I mean, Gareth Arsehole Davis was talking about how bad Conor Benn was and how terrible the situation is. But we all know he's a serious Tyson Fury nut hugger. One of the biggest nut huggers of Tyson Fury out there. And he's not, you know what I mean? He's not said anything about drugs. I've never seen Gareth Arsehole Davis address that drugs thing in relation to Tyson Fury. And it's a similar thing with people like Dan Raphael. They cover up Canelo stuff by saying, oh, it was negligible, traces, he could have eaten meat in a restaurant. We all know that that is not true, bro. Those of us who know boxing know that that whole clenbuterol thing, that was just something to allow Canelo to escape the excesses of punishment, which he pretty much got away with it as well. Another, what is it, 6-month ban when he only fights once or twice a year anyway? There has to be serious bans for this stuff. And hopefully it will deter some of the cheats, but they're not going to deter everyone because you hear stories, man. I've heard them even this week about gyms. I mean, I don't know if I should say this on the show, but people are saying that Conor Benn's gym, he's by far not the only one. I just heard that. Allegedly. I'm not saying that, you know what I mean? And it was interesting that today on Twitter, I saw a statement being released by Tony Sims. Maybe he's responding to some of the rumors that are going around. But I am hearing that myself. I'm sure you've heard those rumors. You've heard rumors about Dominic Ingles' gym up north. I've heard rumors about other gyms. I'm hearing rumors about most of the top fighters are on this stuff. You can't stop them from taking it because, you know, I mean, people are motivated by different things. But what you can do is to try and strengthen, make your regulations more robust so that when you catch these guys, they're given serious punishments.
Shout out to everyone for the comments, man. Loving the comments today here. Daniel Chambers, Rare Cockney Governor. You're liking the videos, it seems. So subscribe, man. We need to get you guys on the chat every week if you're feeling the video, man. But we'll wrap it up here because I do have to go back to work. Thank you all for listening, guys. Laurie, appreciate you joining us always. And we'll catch you all next week, man. Peace out.
Say no to drugs.